Good evening, everyone. Let me call the meeting to order. Let's do a pledge. It's behind you, the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. Let's do a roll call. I see the city administrator. I see George, Pam, Paloma, the mayor's here, and Amber and Jeff. Molly is traveling and excused, and I also see the city attorney. Welcome.
Thank you, and our city planner is online as well.
Okay. Hey, Natalie.
Good evening.
Cool. So first order of business is a couple of public hearings. So that means I'm going to open up public comments first, and then we'll do the public hearings. Remember, for those who want to make a comment, a general comment, you may do so first. If you are here to make a comment on either of the public hearings, one is concerning a zoning map affecting East Main Street, and the other is concerning zoning drive-through facilities and self-storage businesses. If you want to speak on either of those, just hang tight. If you want to make a general comment, this is the first opportunity to do so. I'm going to read off the list. Scott Lerman, come on up.
Copies for the council, if that's okay. I'll just
Sure,
turn the
please.
copy. I did send this ahead of time.
Yeah.
Good evening. I'm Scott Lerman, and I live at 40 North Street. At the last meeting, the council decided to schedule a discussion about communications planning at the upcoming workshop. I thank you for that. But in listening to you, there seemed to be some concern that Beacon does not have the resources to take on evaluating, planning, and implementing a more effective communications approach this year. I urge you to reevaluate the priority you give to communicating well with the Beacon community. So what's so urgent? I had sent this to the council, which is a survey where we did a quantitative survey that I sent to the council last week, highlighted the importance that the community places on goals like evolving zoning to better achieve community goals, protecting historic assets, rethinking the goals of the comprehensive plan, protecting natural resources, and expanding opportunities for the community to have an ongoing dialogue with the mayor, city council, and planning board. In fact, over 53% of the respondents felt it was very important to do far more and soon in opening better two-way channels for communication with the city government. Just to be clear, public comments made here where the council only listens and council workshops where the public can only observe are very helpful, but they're not opportunities for dialogue. I think we in the community want to speak freely with you as a community in open forums. This past week, I also sent you the results of a quick qualitative study that gives you a sense of the effectiveness of current city communications across a range of categories, from the most tangible, like emergency and legally required communications, all the way up to very open-ended things like inspiring the community to service in action. That chart, where all you can see from here, is it actually says that there's an overwhelming percentage of people that think improvement is urgently needed in the city's ability to inform, interact with, and activate the community. So again, I asked you, Mayor, the city administrator, the council, to reconsider and dramatically consider raising the priority of developing and implementing an effective communications plan in the upcoming months. Thank you.
Thank you. Sergey Krasnikov.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. Sergey Krasnikov, Ward 3. I want to acknowledge the great work Fishkill Avenue Concept Committee has done to date to help us to re-envision Route 52 corridor. While you often hear me expressing support for pedestrian and bike-oriented urban planning, I do want to discuss potential negative community impacts of one of the committee recommendations, that of zoning out car-centric uses from the corridor, or more explicitly, car repair shops. A lot of this in prior council's times and effort has been spent on attempting to address the affordability crisis in Beacon. We as a community have focused a lot on housing, and rightly so, as this is one of the biggest expenses and arguably the most important amenity we as humans need. But there is a host of auxiliary affordability issues that can impact communities, such as local availability of needed services. One important aspect of affordability is owning and maintaining a cheaper and used car. On top of regular service needs, all the cars tend to break more often, so access to reliable, trustworthy, and ideally very local car repair shops is a vital necessity that can have considerable financial and employment implications. Let's consider a parent with small children. To bring a car to a shop, say in Wappingers, they would have several options: hire a babysitter while they wait for 2-3 hours for the car to get fixed, take a cab home and then back to the shop, or rely on friends or neighbors, all of which is significant financial and societal expense. Time off to manage car service or repair can also have negative impacts on employment, as garages tend to have similar hours as most other regular jobs. I, a fairly used car owner, even a couple of those, have built relationships with a couple mechanic shops in Beacon, including one on Route 52. This has been a tremendous asset for me and my family to be able to leave a car at a shop at any time and walk home. I also developed trust with some of the mechanics, many of whom are local residents, and I trust that they will only fix what's needed and charge me fairly. Route 52 shops have also been great for One Nature, landscape design company I work for. Ability to have trustworthy relationships with very local shops has helped with managing our small fleet of vans and trucks efficiently, and to have reliable and safe work vehicles for our employees. While I do want to dream of beautiful customer-facing shops all along Route 52 and the future rail trail, reality is we have cars, we will have cars. They need and will need to be serviced and repaired, and we do not have a perfect area in Beacon where that can happen. I would strongly advise the council to be mindful of potential long-term
15
effects of banning
seconds.
car-centric uses, at least the repair shops, as they are a vital necessity. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm reading down the list, but I'm only going to pick on the people who've checked general comment. Dennis Pavlak?
Good evening, council, mayor. I'm here tonight, and when I used to, let me just go back for a minute. When I used to live here, once in a while I use the facilities down the riverfront, you know, the pavilion. Nice day, you want to do some grilling with some friends, family. And I noticed that I should say the majority of the grills down at the riverfront are all rusted out and burned out. And if you go back at my comments, I don't know what year it was, but I brought it up then, and they're still like that today. And I'm just asking, what are people that are going down there for, using the park for, want to grill out and cook out, and they can't cook out because they don't have any, they're short on grills. I counted about 4 or 5 of them that are completely rusted out, and they're just sitting on a rusted pedestal. And, you know, I don't know how many, I think the ones up in the Memorial Park, I think they're all solid and still able to be used, but the majority down the riverfront are just rusted through, rotted and rusted right through, and they're just sitting on a pedestal, just doing nothing. So if that could be done something with, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Clark Gedman.
Clark Gutman, 2 Main Street. Or you listen to me. I'm losing my mind. Wilson Street, Beacon, New York. I was thinking about Main Street. What's confusing about the proposal is the long-term impact on use and taxation. And It would be ideal if a proposal came,
What proposal, please?
okay, we're in public comment?
Yeah, we're in
Oh, my
public.
bad, I'm losing my mind. That's the next one.
Yeah.
Hey, so at any rate, there's a lot happening in the neighborhood regarding the prison ground, and I'm reminded of 20 years ago, I did a little proposal for the regional planning group. Kind of freaked them out. It was at the DIA. And it was a document that kind of showed some of the transportation pitfalls in the neighborhood. And of course, I've long advocated that it should be a university, but that's beside the point. Including the entire park district that was once part of SUNY, that was hijacked by Farmingdale in competition for regional locations of universities and money and things like that. But that's a whole nother, too long of a story to tell. But there is one thing that is very clear, that the access to Main Street, in the middle of Main Street somewhere, near the existing parking facilities on the north side, ought to be some kind of long-term planned access to the prison ground. And that prison ground should go all the way up to Wappingers, where the new Hamburg station is, to bisect that massive property that causes transportation problems on 9D and 9. Before there is any construction on the prison ground, there needs to be a long-term plan that serves the best interests of the city of Beacon and the state of New York, as well as the residents of southern Dutchess County. And I know the council over the last 20 years has been very reluctant of sticking its nose into things that are perceived not your
15
dominion.
seconds.
But the city municipal law is very strong, and there's no reason why Beacon shouldn't be leading the way in addressing these more southern county-wide issues. It would behoove the city to take that opportunity.
Your time has elapsed.
Thank you. So, anyone else in the public here want to make a general comment, not about either the two zoning hearings, public hearings we're going to have? So a general comment, not about either drive-through facilities or self-storage, or about East Main zoning. Okay. Online, anyone? Ben?
If you're on Zoom and you'd like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand option at the bottom of your screen. If you're joining by phone, you will need to press *9. Lastly, if you're joining us on YouTube, you will need to join the Zoom link instead by visiting beaconny.gov and going to our events calendar where you can find the link. As of now, we have 3 hands raised for general comments. First is McCall. McCall, you have permission to speak whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Ben. Good evening, Council and Mayor. My comment is about the ADU law that you're referring to, the planning board into Dutchess County. And so I know it's not finalized yet, but I have some concerns about the data. And I'm aware that we have a new building inspector, so they might not know exactly where to get this information, but I know of several new ADUs, and I have some other friends that reached out to me that know about several other ADUs. So the number of 5 in the recent years just doesn't make sense. I also wanted to know if when there is a legal ADU, there's the designation change to like single-family house with 1 accessory dwelling unit, like I see in some properties in the city? And if not, then what is the indication that there is a legal ADU in that property? What else? Also have a concern about the enforcement of owners residing in the unit and what happens when the when the whole place is sold, like what happens if you have a renter inside. There's some things to think about. In general, I'm supportive of the idea of expanding our housing stock through ADUs, but I know that we have like challenges with enforcement of short-term rentals, and I want to make sure that if we're creating a law that we know how it's going to be tracked and how it's going to be enforced. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next Zoom speaker will be Meg. Meg, you have permission to speak whenever you're ready.
Hi, Meg Lazarus, Ward 1 resident and member of Beacon Climate Action Now and the Beacon Bicycle Coalition. I just joined to just quickly mention that as a resident of Beacon, I personally felt a bit frustrated with how the process of the reimagining of Fishkill Avenue has been handled. And I've also spoken to a lot of folks in the city who feel similarly. It's raised a serious concern among us residents about whether this process was merely a way to check a box rather than to truly engage with public concerns. It's often sort of felt like there's just always been a plan for that stretch of land, and it feels kind of disappointing to get the sense that we're all sort of going through these motions, making recommendations, giving public comment, but ultimately, how much is the public interest really being considered? I was texting with a friend last week who said, I quote, "I understand the motivation of having a Healy rep on the committee. Changes to that stretch of land will directly impact their properties. But once you sue the city, it starts to look like your role on the committee is one of self-interest and as an antagonist to progress, not supporting what's best for the larger community." End quote. So I just want to say this is what the conversations are sounding like around Beacon. So I'm asking you to reconsider your approach, demonstrate some accountability here, and take some meaningful next steps and actions to align better with the interests and the needs of the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next Zoom speaker will be Teresa. Teresa, if you have permission to speak whenever you're ready.
Good evening. I fear the direction the city is moving with the desire to split every property into 2 lots is not the way to go. I agree with the previous speaker that not all ADUs and Airbnbs are on record. I see many new real estate sales showing multiple cars on the lots. We are not a carless city. Save the rail spur. Have a good night.
Thank you. Is that all we got online, Ben, for general comments?
We have one more that was just raised.
Okay.
Our next Zoom speaker is Dara. Dara, you have permission to speak?
This is, you unmuted me, this is Arthur Cameron speaking. I just wanted to make a quick comment about ADUs. I appreciate the idea of increasing the housing supply as a step toward increasing affordability. But I want to say, once again, that simply adding units to the housing stock in the context of the high demand for apartments in Beacon and the push on housing costs, that simply adding ADUs will not necessarily increase affordability. Therefore, it seems to me that the thing that would do that is for ADUs to either require them to be used by a family member or require them to be affordable, whether it's below market rate or Section 8 or something like that. Outside of that, I don't see, they may be convenient, but people who want to add a family member have no problem with it, but they won't necessarily risk affordability. Thank you.
Thank you.
No further speakers on Zoom at this point.
Okay. All right, so let's start up the hearings. So there's 2 public hearings. The first one concerns an amendment to the zoning map on East Main Street, where Main and East Main are. I'll ask for a motion and a second. I don't need a motion and a second to open the public hearing.
That's correct. It's been scheduled.
All right, so I will open the public hearing by first requesting either Natalie or Nick to tell us a little bit about this.
So thank you, Mayor. and members of the council, good evening. So on February 24th, the City Council discussed a proposed zoning map amendment recommended by the former building inspector. The building inspector's memo is included in your agenda packet, as well as the local law, the zoning map, the use tables, and the comment memorandums from the county and city planning boards. The proposed local law would amend the city's zoning map to change the zoning of 25 properties, all commonly located at 1 East Main Street, changing them from the light industrial district to the Central Main Street, the CMS zoning district. As the building inspector notes, over the course of several years, the uses have undergone some changes, and those changes more appropriately fit within the CMS zoning rather than the light industrial zoning. So the county planning board provided a comment memo that it was a matter of local concern, and they left it to your discretion. The city's planning board met last week and issued a comment letter with today's date that is placed in your packet late this afternoon. And on their two-paragraph memorandum, they note that they reviewed it. There were some comments by our attorney from our office, Jennifer Grace, summarizing the local law, as well as commenting on the building inspector's memorandum. And then the board had some discussions about the proposed amendments, and they note that the consensus of the 5 planning board members in attendance was that rezoning from LI to CMS makes sense in terms of the use regulations, but the planning board questioned whether the CMS district was appropriate for the property in terms of the dimensional and the density regulations, the other side of zoning. Zoning looks at what uses are permitted on the property. It also looks at how those uses that are permitted are allowed to be placed within the property in terms of the setbacks from property lines, as well as how much the density. And so they thought that with respect to the dimensional requirements, it might be appropriate to look at perhaps rezoning it to the general business district for the reasons they've mentioned in their memo.
Very good. Okay, thank you for that. So I'm opening the public hearing on this particular amendment, which concerns 1 East Main Street. And I see on the list one person has checked wanting to make a comment at this hearing. That's Clark Gebman.
Clark Edmund, 2 Wilson Street. So, as I started to say, I'm a little troubled by zoning changes that doesn't explain the economic impact to the city's collection of property taxes. And then the follow-on would be, how does it relate to the parking schedules? And then it also raises some questions as to, is this something that was requested by the majority of the co-op? Or it is a co-op, I would imagine, if it condo.
It's a condominium.
Excuse me, yeah, the condo. So everyone has individual ownership rights. They bought them under a certain thing. I don't know that there isn't going to be litigation for someone who opposes it. And so I don't know that the city has really offered up a questionnaire for the applicants and whether all the applicants have signed the application, or whether or not it's just something the city has observed and seeks to clean up the record books. But it does bring forth the whole hodgepodge nature of zoning to fit the use, as opposed to zoning that fits the city's property tax base and livability and functionality. I personally understand that people have made an extensive investment in that property, and that maybe this brings them a better yield and potential. I don't see any of that in the moving records. And so, as a matter of communications and clarity and comprehensive understanding of the economic equation being presented, I think the council should get in the habit of not having these things before it without having all that due diligence. And it may be, if it's coming from the owners, that they should provide for some kind of land use or appraisal of some sort that would explain all the variant issues, so that not only the council but the public understands why this yin and yang at this particular location at this particular time is appropriate. But you really don't seem to have amassed the kinds of qualitative documentation that would fit such a move. And I don't know whether this increases the value, which would be good,
15
or
seconds.
decreases it. But do any of you know?
Thank you. Anyone else in the physical public want to comment on this particular public hearing? Again, this is concerning rezoning at 1 East Main. Okay. And then, Ben, anyone online want to comment on rezoning at 1 East Main?
We have one hand raised for this public hearing, and that is Teresa. Teresa, you can speak whenever you're ready. Teresa's hand seems to be lowered now.
Okay. All right. Can I get a motion and a second to close the public hearing?
Second.
So George and Amber, any discussion on the motion to close? Hearing none, all in favor of closing this public hearing, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. So let's do the second one. Again, I am permitted to open the public hearing, which I will do. And this is a public hearing concerning regulations which are zoning ones for either drive-through facilities and/or self-storage businesses. And again, either Natalie or Nick, can you just describe to the public what we're looking at here?
Yep, I can take this one.
Thank you, Natalie.
So at the same meeting on February 24th, the council did review a draft local law, and that local law is amending Chapter 223 regarding permitted uses. So the two permitted uses are drive-through facilities as an accessory use and self-storage facilities. So the proposed local law eliminates drive-through facilities in all zoning districts. So currently, drive-through facilities are prohibited only in the CMS and the linkage district, and the proposed local law eliminates them in all. And then for self-storage businesses are currently permitted in the general business, or the GB, light industrial, LI, and the heavy industrial, HI zoning districts. And the proposed local law eliminates them in all zoning districts. So those are that's the local law before you. The board does similarly have a recommendation from the planning board dated March 14th. So their commentary, similar to that they gave to the Fishkill Avenue Committee, is that the board's encouraged more specific approach rather than kind of categorically prohibiting these uses. Their recommendation was to identify areas within the city of Beacon, either on a district by district approach or by looking at areas within individual zoning districts where the use should be prohibited rather than kind of a blanket approach. And then Nick, I don't know, did we get county comments on this? I didn't have that in my records, I'm sorry.
We do, and that's included in the agenda packet. It also indicates it's a matter of local concern.
Okay.
That's a
All right. So let me open the public hearing and go down the list of those who signed up. If you didn't sign up, don't worry. After we get through those and you'd like to make a comment on this particular public hearing, just let us know. So the first one on the sign-up list is Sergei Krasikov.
Good evening again, Sergei Krasikov, Ward 3. I want to express my strong support for proposed local law to eliminate drive-throughs facilities as a permitted use. Drive-throughs are not inherently bad. They were invented to address the needs we have, that of convenience. I had on occasion used drive-throughs and would again in the future. This is not to discount environmental and societal costs they may carry. Many other things we depend on do so too. To me, the main question is where the drive-throughs add more value to the community than the potential negative impacts. I would argue that the more urbanized the area is, the more the balance tips towards negative impacts. Urbanized areas mean higher densities, continuous buildings along narrower streets, higher pedestrian and bike use volumes, occasional or regular traffic congestions. In these settings, there is a number of negative impacts the drive-throughs have on the community. Conflicts with pedestrian movement by creating additional curb cuts and vehicle crossings across sidewalks. Requires large land area for queuing lanes that can be used more efficiently. Disrupts urban fabric. Prioritizes car-centric design of a pedestrian-oriented development. Contradicts transit-oriented development goals. Creates traffic management issues, including potential queuing into public streets. Reduces opportunities for active street frontage. Increases vehicle idling, contributing to localized air pollution and emissions in areas with already concentrated traffic. Next, let's consider Beacon. If Beacon is urban or envisioned as urban enough to have negative impacts of drive-throughs outweigh the potential benefits. Our city code recognizes that Beacon is an urban space with wording such as, will contribute to creating more urban pedestrian-friendly quality. In the face of population growth, urbanization, and technological change, urban forestry, enhancing urban form as recommended in the City of Beacon Comprehensive Plan. Both 2007 and 2017 comprehensive plans, which are the closest we have to a shared community vision of what our city is and should be, have multiple references consistent with urban planning. The general tendency is clear: higher density and more urban feel along main corridors and gateway areas. For example, 2007 plan promotes an urban form that prioritizes efficient land use with emphasis on compact mixed-use development at higher densities, which drive-throughs generally do not support. The plan explicitly references smart growth principles, which typically favor walkable communities and discourage outer-dependent developments like drive-throughs. 2017 plan emphasizes high-quality urban design and buildings that face the street, advocates for improvements that reduce vehicle emissions and promote clean air, repeatedly highlights Beacon's walkable scale as a community asset. Let's keep it that way. Please pass the legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Joanna Funnell.
Hi, sorry, croaky voice. Joanna Funnell, Ward 4 resident. I was going to come here tonight to speak about the rail trail, but I decided to talk about drive-throughs instead because this is a major topic of conversation. But to segue between those two topics, I think it makes complete sense to me that we would want to restrict things like drive-throughs and self-storage along proximity to a flagship rail trail for the city and the county. This is similar to what Atlanta has just recently done in its Beltline district. If you don't know what that is, it's a 22-mile repurposed rail corridor. Closer to home, if you look at New Paltz and the way that they've developed businesses along their stretch of the Wallkill Rail Trail, it couldn't be further from a drive-through model. Thinking about places like Water Street Market, which is an old lumber yard, it's a pedestrianized place. It's somewhere you want to hang out, you can grab a coffee, listen to some music, buy some plants if you want, but it has a real sense of purpose and place. Speaking more broadly on drive-throughs and Beacon, we're a compact city. We're just under 5 square miles. We're blessed to not be part of the suburban sprawl that covers a lot of America. So we can go get our coffees and food by foot, by bike, by bus, by car, whatever we want. We don't need drive-throughs. But if you do want to go to a drive-through, I will just say that there are at least 10 of them within a 6-mile radius. It's not very far to get to them. But because of our compactness, also it means that our land is precious. We don't have that much of it, and so I think we need to think very deliberately about what businesses we do want on there and we do put on there. And here's the thing about drive-throughs. I know they're pretty popular with customers and franchisees alike, but their successes are often built on the cost to others. They don't often make long-term good community assets. And to paraphrase urban planners, they're generating profits by sucking the value out of the land around them. They suck value by making roads inefficient and wasting people's time by having to take longer journeys. They suck value by making the built environment less desirable and less safe for pedestrians to walk on. They suck value by generating less tax revenue per acre than traditional businesses might. They suck value by diminishing a sense of distinct character for communities. And they often crowd out other businesses that communities might want more of. So for instance, I know that people often say they want more recreational businesses or activity centers that we can't fit on Main Street, but we could very well do on 52. So I support the proposed ban on drive-throughs in
15
Beacon,
seconds.
and I support a less sprawling, auto-centric Fishkill Avenue for Beacon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Beatrice Clay.
I'm here to talk about, oh, sorry. I'm here to talk about the drive-through on 50 Fishkill Avenue. I am also opposing not to have it done if possible, because I'm thinking about the congestion that's going to be happening on 52. Certain afternoons or early mornings, it's hard to get on there. There's so much traffic going back and forth, and I think having it there will be detrimental to a lot of people. A lot of accidents may happen, driving in and out, people walking. The guys from the Edgewood, they always be walking there in their wheelchair. I think won't be a problem for them also. And I am hoping that you will reconsider that venture. Thanks.
Thank you. Thomas Wright.
Good evening. Thomas Wright, 24 Grove Street. I would like to add my voice to those in support of the proposed local law that would eliminate drive-through facilities as a permitted use in all zoning districts. I believe you should feel confident in your vote to adopt this local law because there is ample rationale for it. Perhaps the best summary of this rationale has been provided by the Conservation Advisory Committee in its memo dated 31 January of this year, stating its strong opposition to the proposed drive-through at 430 Fishkill Avenue. The memo cited significant safety and traffic hazards, fundamental conflict with climate action goals, public health and environmental impacts, as well as economic and community development impacts. One key item from this section on public health and environmental impacts reminds us that 12 idling vehicles in a drive-through generates 50 pounds of carbon dioxide per hour of operation, not to mention the other toxins contained in the vehicle exhaust. This pollution is a direct result of the business operations, and as a result, drive-throughs should be prohibited by zoning in the same way that it prohibits an aluminum smelter from setting up shop in a residential neighborhood. Further rationale can be found in the recommendations of the Fishkill Avenue Concepts Committee, which are part of this evening's agenda packet. The committee concludes that drive-throughs are, quote, not consistent with the overall pedestrian scale vision that the committee is working towards, and further recommends that, quote, drive-through facilities, standalone or used in connection with other uses, be expressly prohibited within all zoning districts along the Fishkill Avenue corridor, end quote. I would also point to the local electrification law that went into effect in January of last year. We cannot, on the one hand, effectively ban fossil fuels in new construction and major renovations, and on the other hand, embrace vehicle-centered designs in new construction and major renovations, and embrace, which results in the increased use of automobiles, which in New York State are responsible for a third of state greenhouse gas emissions. Finally, there is a scoping plan of the CLCPA, aka New York's climate law, which encourages municipalities to embrace walkability and bikeability as a key way to reduce our dependence on cars and the greenhouse gas pollution they emit. In this context, embracing drive-throughs is a really bad look. Please do what New York State, Beacon's own legislative history and its committees are encouraging you to do, and vote to pass the proposed law to prohibit drive-throughs in Beacon. Thank you.
Thank you. Taylor Palmer.
Good evening. For the record, Taylor Palmer with the law firm of Cuddy and Fader on behalf of DKH Realty, and as everyone knows them in the community, Healy. Given the time limit tonight, we're submitting written comments that we enclosed our February 10th and February 13th submission, and we do incorporate our February 18th work session comments for the record of proceedings for this public hearing. Since we last spoke, of note, On March 11th, so last Tuesday, the planning board approved Healy's application for a lot merger and site plan approval, which proposes to adaptively reuse the existing car dealership at 420 Fishkill Avenue for a fully zoning compliant mixed-use development, including a Dunkin' Coffee House with permitted accessory drive-through, additional commercial space, and residential units on the second floor. The project received numerous pieces of public support, which we have submitted in those letters, and I believe will probably be referenced later in the meeting, which don't align with the Fishkill Avenue Committee's statements to the contrary, include some important inclusions, like a future rail trail connection, which was mentioned this evening. Just think that, a walk-up window as well, crosswalks and other pedestrian and landscape improvements, all for the former car dealership. We're greening up the space. For the council's ease of reference, in our most recent letter, we did cite to the planning board's March 11th discussion about this local law. I believe it was mentioned this evening by the city attorney and the planner. Of note, we would highlight the planning board did not support prohibiting drive-throughs in all districts in the city. Rather, the general consensus was that drive-through uses made sense in certain areas, these are their words, and more specifically within certain areas and sections along Fishkill Avenue, as referenced in the image in front of you. The planning board also suggested that the city council take a hard look at where drive-throughs could be permitted, including soliciting feedback from the city's traffic consultant and not just a committee. Accordingly, we respectfully request that the city consider the planning board's thoughtful recommendations and undertake a more comprehensive review and analysis before acting on this local law. Healy has been and remains committed to long-term corporate citizenship in the city of Beacon, but these so-called quick fixes are not supported by your city's comprehensive plan. They need further review and consultation with traffic experts, not a committee's incomplete recommendations to prohibit same and the fuller context of this whole city. So, on behalf of the Healys, who are working to reinvigorate this corridor with pedestrian connections, a crosswalk directly to Townsend Street, trail linkages to the potential future rail trail that doesn't exist at this time but hopefully will, we ask the council to consider the following if it decides to still move forward with this law. Instead of prohibition of drive-through uses, the council might, for example, consider grandfathering in a drive-through component specifically for an application that's reviewed and approved by your planning board, that was reviewed by your traffic experts for pedestrian and traffic safety, or simply creating a special permit regulation for these types of uses, drive-throughs in the rear only, screening, public benefits, rail trail linkages, things that you can all control and make sure that the planning board would have to implement. There are ways to do that. You could also prohibit, for example, fast food restaurants, specifically at drive-throughs at fast food restaurants instead of coffee houses. They're distinct uses in your code. Or enable drive-throughs.
Your time has elapsed.
Thank you. Just if I may, this is the first application the city has seen in the last decades for a drive-through. So what's the rush, especially when the project was reviewed and approved by your planning board? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clark.
Clark, stay up there. You're next.
Can I hold it?
It was a setup.
Yeah.
You know, he's a nice guy, you know. If it was me, what I tell you is, you're really subject to being sued. Because CarMax has a drive-through in its frontage. That's what the sign says. Now, I remember when they appeared, they said they weren't going to do commercial business or people, foot traffic and all that. But that's what that lane is right in front. Drive through this way to drop off your car. What about the car wash? It's a drive-through. So, first of all, I'm not happy with underinvestment per lineal foot tax value on a commercial property. I think this is an underinvestment. But the issue on drive-through, okay, that's the worst place in the world to opine that you can restrict it. The case law for zoning is very clear. With these adjoining uses, potentially you could, now I understand Healy's a nice guy, you're talking to him and you're planning the world, okay, in that little part of Route 52. But you really need to have on staff some people who really, really know what they're doing about these hyper-technical issues. And it would be much less expensive for the old taxpayers in the city to begin preliminary conversations about what they can and can't build. You literally have 200, 300, 400, 500 units of housing at the opportunity of empowering homeowners in this city to do something with their land without having to gamble a second mortgage of $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to have the professional documents. When an employee of the city should be there ready to say, you know what, I think we can talk and we'll talk around, we'll do it. You are perpetually creating a roadblock to take effectively the assets, the generational wealth, the people who have good fortune to be here for a long time. And you're putting a toll booth up from them being able to realize generational wealth or for the children to live nearby. And it's all done under the auspices of making people feel belittled and lowly that, well, they don't understand these complicated things. Okay, it's called politics, it's called land use politics, and it really ought to stop for the benefit of the citizens of this city.
Thank you. So is there anyone in the physical audience that would like to make a comment about, in this public hearing? So again, about the zoning proposals with respect to either drive-throughs or storage facilities, self-storage. So is it Dennis? Sure.
Well, I just like to say, during COVID, how did everybody eat? How did you eat when you went to fast food? You couldn't go in, you couldn't go inside and eat, you had to go to the drive-through. What did I say, drive-through? That is correct, the drive-through. Drive-in movie theaters abound. They were the only place you could go to when you wanted to watch a movie. You couldn't go to a movie theater. You had to go to the drive-through if you wanted to go get fast food. And everyone to the north of us has a drive-through and a Dunkin' Donuts. It's part of their business. It's who they are, it's what they do, and what kind of revenue they're making for the town of Fishkill. I'd like to see the city of Beacon make the same kind of revenue here. And with going back years ago when I pretty much lived here, 20 years, attended every meeting. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but however, I attended a lot of zoning board and planning board meetings, and when the person that came with the project before the board didn't have enough their setback, that was somehow okay, and their project continued to move forward. I don't know why we're limiting commercial businesses when they thrive in the business that they only know what to do and how they're doing it. If a drive-through is going to create more revenue for a city, town, or village, what is the big deal about having more revenue generated that's going to go to the tax base? And I understand don't get me wrong, I understand the pollution in the cars, but a lot of people don't want to go through the drive-through. They go in. Some that are got to go to work and they're on their way to work, they want to go to the drive-through quick, in and out, and they're out. But I just have a hard time with this, how we're limiting commercial businesses on what they can and what they can't have. I don't even believe we have a public hearing regarding it. I just think it's, it shouldn't be that we got to limit commercial business. And they have enough of land to have a drive-through where it's not going to be affecting traffic, and there's going to be crosswalks, and...
Your time has elapsed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, anyone else in the audience? Sure, come on up, and then behind him in a minute.
Hi, my name is Stuart Weatherby. I live at 66 Mead Avenue. I'm in favor of the proposed law to prohibit drive-throughs and self-storage units. I have lived in the same address for over 30 years. I have watched Beacon's transformation from a city with a boarded-up Main Street and depressed housing market to one of the most vibrant and desirable places to live in the Hudson Valley. Although little has been done infrastructure-wise to the Fishkill Avenue corridor, I always felt like it was a matter of time, and that time has come. I've heard Route 52 called the back way into Beacon or the highway into Beacon, but I see it as a gateway into Beacon. The Fishkill Avenue Committee that was formed by the mayor has been working hard with a lot of public input to recommend long and short-term development strategies. One of the things they are working on is making the corridor less car-centric and more pedestrian and bike-friendly, which seems to have a lot of public support. The committee has stated that drive-throughs and self-storage would not fit well into this planning and should be prohibited. This is one of the last places in Beacon to be redeveloped and truly a gateway into our great city. I urge the council to pass this law and keep Fishkill Avenue from becoming a strip of drive-throughs and self-storage units. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up.
Hi, thank you. I am Katie Helmuth of Ward 1. I don't have any speech prepared. I was listening at home while making dinner for my kids. I'm speaking in favor of the drive-through to have them. If I had time to start a Mothers in Favor of drive-through group, I would do so. I am still in kid pickup zone right now. I have 3 kids and I'm picking up my last one at 9 o'clock. So driving with children is very important to me. Driving with parents and grandparents and people who really don't walk that well is something that I do often. I think it's dismissive of people who need to drive to say no drive-throughs, just go to a little artisanal coffee shop. I think it's dismissive of people who are doing laundry right there. It adds value to people who are doing laundry to walk over to the Dunkin' Donuts and go and get a donut and get coffee, instead of being judgmental about which coffee shop they should go to snack up before they do these errands. There's all kinds of people who live here, all kinds of different people who do not have a lot of time, and we need to just drive there and get it. And I know it's ideal that we should be riding our bikes, but we're not all riding our bikes. We have soccer equipment, we have elderly parents, and we have a lot of stuff in our cars. I'm also concerned that the move to outzone auto businesses along that corridor is just being done. It's really shocking to me. If anything should happen to those businesses, like if it should burn down more than 50%, as I understand it, they might not be able to build back up, because that's, I mean, please correct me if I'm misunderstanding that. Otherwise, I'm just here to say that it adds value. Drive-throughs adds value to my life. I am a biker, I am a jogger on a daily basis. So I get it, and I get we need to be aware of the climate, but we are driving, and we need coffee and donuts. Thanks, bye.
Again, anyone else in the physical public want to make a comment about this public hearing? Okay. So, Van, anyone in the remote part of the meeting?
We have one hand raised, and that's Teresa. Teresa, you have permission to speak whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I just want to start by saying, please let us have our 3 minutes without interruption. In the context of the planning and ideologies on the recently proposed Fishkill Avenue concepts, it is imperative to acknowledge that Route 52 functions as a significant commercial corridor and is one of only 2 designated trucking routes into our city. In strategic decision-making, I have opted to support the inclusion of the drive-throughs in the planning cycle, while continuing to advocate for the exclusion of recreational bicycles on Route 52 at all costs. Let's keep everyone safe. Looking to the future, there may be a necessity for additional drive-throughs along Route 52 as the community continues to develop. Moreover, our city needs to aim for the establishment of a comprehensive hospital facility, perhaps a satellite complex that can adequately serve the needs of our residents rather than relying on small storefront clinics located in high-traffic areas such as those on Main Street. I am strongly opposed to allowing storage unit facilities in the city of Beacon. Before long, you might propose turning them into tiny apartments. As we navigate these complex issues, it is essential to strike an appropriate balance between development and community needs. Therefore, the timely update of the city comprehensive plan must be prioritized at the top of the list to ensure that it aligns with the evolving requirements of our residents and promotes sustainable growth in the coming years ahead, not too far into the future. The city needs to curb the continuation of overdevelopment. By taking these steps, we can cultivate a thriving and well-structured environment for all Beacon residents. If only the recent public presentation on the proposed Fishkill Avenue redesign drew the same crowd that the Newburgh Brewery drew last weekend with Coheed and Cohabra tour Rock On. Let's protect the work of the founding fathers of Matawan Village. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Anyone else online, Ben?
Yes, Meg has hand raised. Meg, you have permission to speak whenever you're ready.
Hi there, Meg Lazarus again, Ward 1 resident, member of Beacon Climate Action Now and Beacon Bicycle Coalition. I'm also a parent of 2 small children, and I'm speaking in favor of the proposed local law concerning use regulations for drive-through facilities and self-storage businesses. As we've seen here, you have lots of residents showing up time and time again to council in opposition of drive-throughs on Fishkill Avenue. The CIC also has strongly advised not to allow drive-throughs in our city because of the detrimental environmental effects they would have. And the FACC has come out in opposition to drive-throughs, which is stated in their memo sent to City Council regarding zoning recommendations. Honestly, I don't know. I feel for all of you sitting up there on council. I can't even begin to understand what it's like to sit there and have everyone come at you from different vantage points. But I think at the end of the day, you know, it's your jobs to do what's best for the community at large and the big vision, the big picture, the long game, you know. And at the end of the day, I think, you know, you just each have to ask yourself, what is your vision for a better Beacon? I'm hoping that you'll listen to what our community has to say and the trusted various committees that have been fighting for to pass these regulations around drive-throughs and storage facilities. Thank you.
Thank you.
No further hands raised on Zoom.
Okay. So I'm looking.
Oh, Mayor, we have one late hand.
Okay, let's do it.
McCall, you have permission to speak whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I just want to say that I'm not a Dunkin' Donuts fan myself, and I understand that I live right next to this proposal. I understand that a lot of people are against it, including some of my neighbors, and I personally am totally fine with it. I know that some other neighbors are totally fine with it. I know that there are a lot of people in the city that really want a Dunkin' Donuts. I just am, without saying do it or don't do it, I want to make sure that when you're making your decision that you have really listened to our planning board and their comments about how zoning is being done right now, how piecemeal it is, how reactionary it is. I agree with Teresa that we have to redo the comprehensive plan, and zoning is supposed to reflect the comprehensive plan. And last thing I will say is a lot of people I heard say, I'm fine with one drive-through, but there's going to be a lot of them. This project was already approved by the planning board, and if you're going to pass the law, I urge you to think about giving them a grandfathering them in. And please, I do not want to agree with Taylor Palmer anymore. Goodbye.
Okay. Ben?
No further hands raised on Zoom.
All right, so council, I'm looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion.
Second.
So any discussion? All right, all in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Thank you all. It's always appreciative when we receive feedback. And, you know, while we have to listen to a lot of it, it's also, we're very grateful for you to be here, whether it's online or in person. So let's do reports from council members. Jeff, you want to start, and we'll go around that way?
Sure, yeah, I've got 4 things I'm going to say, 5 actually.
Hang on one second. Let's give people just a minute.
I could just yell.
No, that's all right. And it's not a comment about your comments that they're all leaving.
You
Taylor's
know.
still here. All right, go ahead, Jeff, sorry.
No problem. No, thank you. First, just want to thank people who came to the office hours on Sunday. It was great to have the attendance there. I just love listening to the community. I'll reiterate what you just said, Mayor, about receiving comments. It's absolutely essential. I appreciate all the enhancements we can do around communication, so thank you for that. I want to emphasize that we had 2 great presentations at our workshop last week by the Commissioner of the Dutchess County Department of Mental Health and the Commissioner of Department of Community and Family Services. Just really encourage people to listen to that recording if you haven't seen it. There's a ton of great resources, and it's relevant to the work that we do and the necessity of our times. There is on this Thursday, as was also covered in the presentation at the workshop, this Thursday at noon on the 20th of March, there's the Beacon Hopewell Rail Trail presentation, the virtual meeting. We don't have the link that I saw on our website, but there you can go to beaconhopewellrailtrail.com to access that virtual meeting. But it struck me that given the relevance of it for us, we should have that link on our website as well and some information on our calendar. There are 2 really good events taking place at the Howland Library as well that I just wanted to emphasize. There's on tomorrow evening at 6 p.m., there's a disaster preparedness training workshop, helping people prepare for, unfortunately, inevitable disasters that will affect us. So that's 6 p.m. The registration can be found on the Howland website through the registration page, as well as a citizen application assistance workshop this Saturday at 11. So helping people with the process of becoming naturalized citizens of the U.S., free resources to help people navigate the legal challenges. So just really good resources right here in community.
I'll be brief today. I just have 2 thank yous or recognition. One for the Parade of Green and their organizers. That is kind of the first parade of parade season here in Beacon, and it was, I think, very lively and fun. So I thank them again for keeping that going for 10 years, and cheers to another 10 years. And then on Sunday, we had the Fishkill Avenue Concepts Committee do a really wonderful presentation at Industrial Arts. I believe that, well, actually, I know that our videographer was there, so if you didn't get to see it, you can watch a replay. I think we have the presentation available on the website. And I thank the committee for their thoughtfulness and thoroughness in thinking through and taking in some of the public input in this area. So just appreciate their efforts, and that's all from me today.
Thank you. I will try not to repeat, but I will say thank you to everyone who spoke. We will be discussing all of that feedback, including comments that we received via email at our next workshop in 2 weeks. If you're listening and wondering why we didn't discuss any of this at all, we're reserving that conversation for our next workshop. And because it is there are 5 Mondays in March, our next workshop will not be for another 2 weeks, so March 31st. Otherwise, I'll say thank you to those who came to my office hours this past Sunday. I had some really great conversations, and my next open office hours will be in just another 2 weeks on Sunday, April 5th from 4 to 6 p.m. And I'm moving to this side of town. I'll be at Bank Square Coffee House. Thanks.
Good evening. Thank you all for attending and comments on the public hearings. I did listen to the planning board, and I know we've been wanting to try to get together with them. I'm proposing that maybe the city council and the mayor could attend their planning board meeting, either in April or May, for that first 30 minutes, because it's clear that the planning board also kind of has questions for us and concerns of us bringing things to them. So I really think we need to have a discussion. But I want to thank the planning board. I really appreciated their input on both public hearing comments, and it really had, you know, there were some comments made that I think we need to rethink, you know, especially the 1 East Main Street, to kind of look at things, you know, take what they had said into consideration, not just on paper, but what they verbally were speaking about. And then also, I don't have office hours, but you are more than happy to reach me at pweatherby@beaconnewyork.gov, and more than willing to find a great time to meet with anyone who wants to. Thank you.
Good evening. First, I'd like to say happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. And Amber, you being to it, I was going to thank all those that organized the Parade of Green, as well as...
They deserve two thank yous.
Well, yeah, and, you know, they were both very well attended, and they were a great contribution to the community. But what they both have in common is it's organized by volunteers. Yeah. And volunteerism in this city is unbelievable. The amount of generosity and people that give back to their community, it's the core of this community. So I really want to say is just thank you to all the volunteers for all they do and continue to do. So thanks.
So I'll do two comments. I know Chris has a couple of updates as well. The first one was about the planning board's comments, and I wasn't surprised by the set regarding drive-through and self-storage, but they were absolutely right with respect to East Main, that the dimensional aspects of the zoning need to be considered as well as the use aspects. And this goes to a larger issue, and I just got to think how we present it to council, and I'd like to have a meeting with my city attorney and our planner on this at some point. But our whole structure of zoning is not as fit for purpose as it used to be. We used to have, you know, heavy industry and light industry, and we used to think light industry was not quite a factory, but kind of close. Our uses are merging, and I think our zones put them into categories that don't always make sense. That was very clear to me when we discussed the setback requirements, and I was noting that some of our R1s, that's single-family zones, excluded 60% of the property from development by having very large setbacks. And that's doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of being environmentally sustainable. Now the third element, so the uses seem to be like mixed in ways that we weren't expecting. The setbacks seem different because we're looking at sustainability. And now the other forms of the dimensional regulations also need to be rethought a little bit. I don't know how to do that yet, but I want to come to you all with some ideas on that, right? Because we're seeing this with some frequency. You know, if we do something with respect to self-storage, I'll pick the one that's less controversial. If we do it by the zones, they don't quite fit what we're thinking, I think. So anyway, that's the first comment. That's just musing. The other one is I do want to provide a little information on the traffic situation on northbound 9D. I don't know if any of you have noticed, but it's better. With the help of Assemblyman Jacobson, we have been very firmly talking with the state DOT, and talking is, I guess, the right word, but we're not going away. And we kept coming to the table saying we've got a significant northbound problem with traffic on 90, and in particular it's the train, the commuter trains coming out trying to turn left onto the westbound bridge. The other issue we've been raising is very specifically, in addition to the general problem, the signal at Verplank and 9D has just been wrong for some period of time. I want to give credit to DOT. they've done two things. One is they look very carefully at the Verplank intersection, and they put in another camera, and I think it's made a significant difference on that intersection. That particular intersection would stop traffic for 2 cars on Verplank instead of allowing the traffic to flow northbound to get onto that bridge. That intersection is actually now timed with all 5 from 84 down to Beekman. Is that 5, 1, 2, whatever it is, might be 4, depends on how you count the ones at I-84. They have what's called an adaptive signal system that they've just put into place. They had it originally set up with sensors on the ground. They decided they wanted to do cameras. They installed the cameras. They switched it on, and I've seen some data on it. Now, I don't want to say we have a solution that's great, but from what I can tell, it has improved. And what this system does is it can tell if there's northbound a large flow of traffic. It times all of the lights longer heading northbound to allow that traffic to turn left onto the bridge. It does the opposite as well. If it senses that the off-ramp from the bridge is starting to fill up, such that there might be cars ending up on the bridge itself in those lanes, it will then switch the lights to allow the off-ramp from the bridge a longer signal. And I'm seeing data, because they're showing us data as they measure, that during the commuting rush hours, the signals heading north go longer. And that the rest of the time, they go back to normal. In fact, on average, it's about the same length of time. It's just increasing it during heavy traffic northbound and decreasing it otherwise. I'm encouraged that this is making a difference. My one test subject is the city administrator, who goes home to New Paltz daily and thinks it clearly is improved. I know the intersection at Verplank is clearly improved. So I'll just ask folks, see what you think. We're going to get some more data, but I think we've had the first improvement on that in a long time. So, and I'll turn it over to the city administrator.
So I just have 3 announcements. Last week we began remobilizing for the Fishkill-Teller Avenue project. That's a $9 million project to upgrade that entire roadway, including replacing all sidewalks, doing all new curbs, and then eventually repaving. They are going to be finishing Teller Avenue over the next month or 2, and then repaving that whole section, and then they're going to be jumping to Fishkill Avenue, where they'll be finishing what they started last year, and then also beginning work on the replacement of the sidewalks between Blackburn Avenue and Mill Street. So we're hoping to be done by July. Ben, can you put up the water meter? I just wanted to remind people that we are still in the midst of a water meter upgrade for the radio transistors on the water meters throughout the city. We have sent 2 letters now, and we are getting close to a deadline, which is April 1st. Most people have either already had their water meter replaced out, or they have scheduled the appointment. If you have an appointment, there's no penalty, so please call the number on this sheet. It's 877-860-8376. 877-860-8376. And you will be talking to VEPO to set up a meeting to have your transistor changed. If you don't respond to this, we are going to have to put a $250 penalty on each quarter, continuing until your meter is changed out. So again, we have a number of people that still haven't responded. If you haven't changed out your meter or arranged an appointment, don't wait for a letter, just please call that number. And then finally, on a nicer note, we are doing our tree purchasing program for backyard trees. We did a pilot of this last year, and we sold about 3 dozen trees at 1/2 the retail cost. These are delivered to your home. We get them at a bulk discount. We deliver them to your house, and you would be responsible for planting it. We have sold 31 of the available 60 trees, and you have a couple more weeks to go on. We definitely have some types that are more popular, and we're seeing if we can do a last-minute shift, and then we'll be delivering these trees in April. And that's all I have.
Okay. So we've got one local law and resolution. So let me get a motion and a second. This is a resolution to refer a proposed local law regarding zoning, and that's referring it to the City of Beacon Planning Board and the Dutchess County Planning Board. It concerns accessory apartments. Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion. Second.
So that was Amber and Paloma. Before we go further, either Natalie or Nick, would you just take us through both that it's a referral and what we're referring?
Certainly. You're also scheduling a public hearing for April 21st, which will allow Dutchess County Planning Board as well as the City of Beacon Planning Board to review this before the public hearing. The Planning Board will consider this at their April meeting, the City's Planning Board. So this local law amends the zoning chapter concerning accessory apartments. In your packet is a memo from the city planner that reviews some of the changes. The more significant changes are that you're permitting accessory apartments in all zoning districts so long as it's to an existing detached single-family property. You've also removed the minimum apartment size and said that any accessory apartment with a total square footage greater than 50% of the primary building footprint, site plan approval from the planning board is required. There are a number of changes in this law that removes it from the planning board and gives the discretion to the building inspector to issue the permits for an accessory dwelling unit, and thus removing some time and cost element for construction of those apartments. The change to the local law from that which you reviewed last time is modifications to subsections H and I. This introduces the concept in certain instances of an application being referred by the building inspector to the city's Architectural and Community Appearance Board, your ARB, which is a subset of the planning board members, and that occurs in two instances. One, it's required when the proposed use is less than 10 feet from the property line and within 20 feet of any dwelling unit on an adjacent property. And then specifically with respect to the R1-10, R1 7.5, and the R1-5 zoning districts, where the side and rear setback of 5 feet is required, review by the ARB is required if the proposed accessory apartment is less than 10 feet from a dwelling unit on an adjacent property, and using the same design guidelines as set forth in Section H. And we've also added the definition of occupied primary residence and owner.
Okay, so this is all about trying to simplify the requirements for accessory dwelling units, and we are both referring it and setting the public hearing?
Correct.
For April 21st. Okay. Any comments or questions by the council?
I just wanted to clarify something. I wasn't sure, but I thought we decided that if you were going to build a accessory dwelling unit that was more than 50% of the size of the primary unit, I don't remember us saying that that triggers the site plan review. Did we agree on that?
And this is in Section F on the local law that's in your agenda packet.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was being treated like any other units, that it was maximum 1,000 square feet, regardless of the size of the primary dwelling.
Yeah, I thought we pulled both the min, the max, and the 50%. I thought we pulled them all.
Because basically it subjects a person with a smaller house an added burden of going to the site plan to the planning board.
Right.
And I don't think that was our intent.
I can jump in here. This is Natalie. I'm still on. So I'm trying to get my camera to go on. So there's not a requirement that you have to be less than 50% of the primary structure, but what has been kept or what was retained is that if you are over 50% of the primary structure, that requires review by the ARB, right? I think that requires review by the planning board. So it's not a limitation, but based on my notes in the conversation in the last meeting, that planning board review was still required if you are bigger than 50% of the primary structure.
Could you remind me of the logic of that? I don't recall us.
I think that was what the conversation we got into around what is accessory and what is primary, right? And if you start to get equal to in size or somewhat closer, equal to the size of the primary structure, are you still accessory? Or larger than the structure, are you still an accessory use? So I think coming from that conversation, deeming these as they are defined as accessory apartments, that they should still be of a smaller size. And so again, we're not necessarily placing that limitation that you must be that you must be less than 50% of the primary structure. But if you're bigger than that, that's something that the planning board may need to look at so that they can deal with this more nuanced conversation about accessory and primary.
I mean, that's the way I recall it, and I was comfortable with that check for that case.
Yeah, that reflects my recollection in my notes.
And when we do, yeah, and I now recall this ARB concept. If we do something like it, are we saying we can ask the planning board to look at it without like full site plans? Is that what we're kind of trying to get at?
No, it requires.
I think it has to have a full site plan.
That's correct, yeah. In subsection D, it requires site plan approval.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if we try to make this easier, I guess I just don't necessarily agree with the logic of, in terms of size and what's accessory and what's not, because probably a small house in Beacon is probably no less than 1,000 square feet, I guess. So the accessory would be equal to or less than even the smallest house. So I just don't.
Would you like the planning board to be asked to offer an opinion on that specific section?
Sounds great.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
would be wise.
Yeah, okay, because then you can, workshop and make further revisions when it comes back to you. Okay.
So is what we could have done, it was an amendment before we refer, right? But what the suggestion on the table, if that's okay, is to leave it as it is, but to inquire the planning board specifically on that item. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, do we need a motion, Nick, for that?
No, we'll take the direction from the council and convey that to the planning board.
Okay. Yeah, and I think this is one of the areas where we're kind of playing back and forth, and having their opinion, I value that a lot, so that'd be great. All right, any other comments on this?
No.
All right, so all in favor of referring the ADU amendments to both the county planning board and the city planning board and scheduling the public hearing for April 21st, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. I am looking for a motion, other than from Molly, who's not here, to
don't know
approve the
what we're gonna
minutes.
do.
I know, of March 3rd.
Motion?
Okay.
Second.
So Paloma and Amber.
We're just going to have to trust that they were.
I'm not going to ask for any comments, additions, corrections, et cetera, unless you all have some.
They looked
I
fine.
did not find any.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you all. I'm glad you tolerate my fun with the minutes. This is the second opportunity for public comment. If you had not made a comment previously and would like to do so now, this would be the opportunity. Anyone in the physical public want to make a comment who didn't before? Seeing no one? Oh, all right, please come on up. Tell us who you are.
I'm Fran Riley. Just very quickly regarding the One East Main zoning, just wanted to reiterate what Clark had asked, which was, what are the implications tax-wise for central versus business versus light industrial? Like, we just don't know sort of what those implications are. And I also let him know that owners didn't get a survey or anything like that, that, that the building inspector had talked to the retail owners. So anyway, that's all I want to say, and I thank you for a good meeting.
Okay. I would simply respond, and ordinarily we don't, that I don't think the zoning would have any implication on value or on taxation, unless for some reason the rezoning dramatically increased the assessed value of the property, which I would think it would not. So, but
Right,
again,
the assessment is based upon the use of the property.
yeah.
So,
Okay. Anyone online want to make a comment who did not make one before?
None online.
So the next meeting, which you heard before, is not next Monday. It is the following Monday. It will be a workshop at 7 here. Next Monday will be a week off because it is the fourth Monday in a 5-Monday month. And I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Pam and Paloma, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you all and good night.
Recording